Chapter 8, Ambush. The sun had already begun to slide toward the horizon when Chuma noticed the same sour, smoky smell he had whiffed that morning. The little party had been traveling at a good pace all day. The group included Dr. Livingston, 6 porters, each carrying a load of supplies and trade goods, and the 2 Ajawa boys. "I don't remember any of this country, do you?" asked Wikitani. "No, it must be a different route than the Redcaps took." "I hope the doctor knows where he's going." "He's got maps," assured Chuma. They worked their way down a steep, wooded hill to a small river. On the other side, several canoes were grounded on a small beach beneath a steep cliff. "There's a Manganja village up there that I visited when I came through here 2 years ago," said Livingston as they waded across the shallows. "The canoes are still here, but where are the children? Why aren't they coming out to meet us?" Climbing the trail to the top of the cliff, Chuma worried whether the Manganja would welcome them when they realized the 2 boys were Ajawa. But the village was empty. Every house had been burned. Chuma then realized that the strange smell came from the burning huts. On the still night air, the smoke had drifted through that part of the Shire River valley. "Where are the people?" asked Wikitani. "Dead, or fleeing the war," said one of the porters grimly. In the ruins of one of the houses they found the body of an adult woman, possibly someone too sick or old to flee. They buried the body and then sat under a tree near the edge of the village while Livingston studied his map. After a time he looked up at the boys and said in a very tired voice, "I think if we're going to find your village, we'd better turn east here and go around the bottom of Mount Zomba and approach Lake Shirwa from the south." "We had a good march today," he announced to everyone. "My guess is that the Manganja who lived here are either captured or still on the run and too afraid to return. And since the Ajawa know this village has already been defeated, I doubt that they will return. So let's stay here for the night." But the porters let out a loud protest. The idea of sleeping where people had been killed and homes burned terrified them. So the party hiked east until darkness forced them to stop and make camp. That night, however, they built no fires, not wanting to attract any attention. They also posted 2 guards all night. Chuma and Wikitani took their turns on guard, though not at the same time. "What was it like? Did you fall asleep?" asked Chuma when Wikitani woke him for his turn in the middle of the night. "Are you kidding?" said Wikitani. "I was too scared that someone would sneak up on our camp." The next morning, as they hiked east, they began meeting Manganja fleeing the war. At first, there were just 1 or 2 at a time, but soon they passed whole families. Some people had wounds that Dr. Livingston tried to treat as quickly as he could, but his great urgency was to get to the front and make contact with the leaders of those who were fighting in the hope of achieving peace. Around midday, they came to another deserted, burned village. No dead were found, but corn was dumped out of the storehouses and spilled all over the ground. A few scraggly chickens pecked at it, but flew away, squawking when anyone came near. In the afternoon, the little party saw the smoke of other burning villages. In the distance, they could hear shouts of victory mixed with cries of women mourning over their dead. They had traveled a few miles out onto an open plain with high grass, huge boulders, and occasional trees when one of the porters pointed out a line of Ajawa warriors coming down a distant trail with Manganja captives. "This is our chance," said Livingston. "Maybe I can reason with them and arrange a meeting with the chiefs." But when the 2 groups met, one of the Manganja captives recognized Livingston and started yelling, "Our general has come! The white man will free us! The white man will free us!" Other Manganja joined in, and for a few moments there was great confusion. The Ajawa warriors panicked and fled, yelling, "War! War!" Then the Manganja also ran off in the opposite direction, toward the distant hills, leaving Livingston and his party standing alone in the open country, unable to talk peace with anyone. "Why did he start yelling that I was their general and liberator?" said Livingston, taking his blue cap off and slapping it on his leg in frustration. "Where did he get that idea?" "Excuse me, doctor," Wikitani offered, "but I think I recognize the man. He was one of the slaves of the Redcaps. We traveled together before you freed us." "Of all the—" "I should have known," said the doctor, in disgust as he sat down on a rock. He was one of those men who did not stay to help build the mission. They probably told the story to every Manganja they met, and he thought I was going to free him again. Ugh, now we'll never make contact with the Ajawa. But he was wrong. The white man and his company had traveled only a short distance when a much larger number of Ajawa warriors appeared, closing in on the little group from both sides. "Down!" yelled Livingston. Chuma and Wikitani dropped to the ground and crawled behind an enormous anthill. Livingston and the porters took cover in the tall grass and behind a few rocks at hand. As the Ajawa came closer, Chuma caught glimpses of movement as the warriors darted skillfully through the tall grass from rock to bush to tree. When they were within 100 yards, they began shooting their arrows at Livingston and his men. Their accuracy was amazing and would have been deadly if the travelers had not taken cover so quickly. The porters had their guns ready and would have shot back, but Livingston kept saying, "Hold your fire! We don't want any bloodshed!" Then he called out in a loud voice, "Ajawa warriors, we have not come to fight, but to talk peace." But the number of arrows flying toward them seemed only to increase. Finally, in desperation, Wikitani scrambled onto the anthill, stood up, and yelled in the native Ajawa language, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot! I am Ajawa!" Chuma was ready to join him when Wikitani let out a yell and fell back down to the ground with an arrow through his arm. "We've got to get out of here," said Livingston, moving quickly to Wikitani's side. He pulled the arrow from the boy's arm and pressed hard to stop the flow of blood. "They're not going to listen to reason." Chuma raised his head and saw the Ajawa warriors advancing on their position more quickly, doing a wild war dance as they came to within 50 yards. One of the porters shouted, "Doctor, they're surrounding us. The trail is cut off." Livingston was tying his handkerchief tightly around Wikitani's arm. "Then we'll have to fight our way out," he said grimly. It was exactly what the frightened porters had been waiting for. They opened fire with their guns, and soon the Ajawa warriors pulled back. "I hit 2," one of the men cheered. "I got 1," said another. In all, the porters claimed to have shot 6 Ajawa, but when the doctor climbed to the top of the anthill and surveyed the area, no dead or wounded could be seen. "Let's go before they return," he ordered, and the group moved warily back up the trail toward the protection of the forest. As they reached the safety of the jungle trail, Livingston walked between the 2 boys with a hand on each of their shoulders. "I'm very, very sorry," he said. "I did not want to shoot at your people." Chuma felt uncomfortable. He had been afraid and was glad when the fighting stopped, but he had also felt angry when the porters began shooting their guns at Ajawa warriors, his own people. But seeing how discouraged the doctor looked, he finally said, "You couldn't help it." "Maybe not," Livingston said. "But I've been in Africa for 20 years, and I have been face to face with some of the fiercest chiefs in the whole land. I have been within an inch of losing my life, but I have never before had to shoot at an African. I've always found another way." The doctor walked in silence for a few minutes, then said, "It feels like the end of my work here. Word will spread. How will the people ever trust me?" Chuma looked at Wikitani. Pain etched the other boy's face from the wound in his arm, but both boys seemed to realize that their friend the doctor was also struggling with pain. Toward evening, the travelers came upon a group of Manganja refugees fleeing for their lives. Livingston invited them to share their fire, hopeful that the increased numbers would be sufficient protection from an attack. "What do you know of the fighting around Lake Shirwa?" the white man asked their guests, gently cleaning Wikitani's wound in the firelight and putting medicine on it from the shiny tube. "There's no fighting there," said the head man. "Is it possible to get there from here?" "Nope. Terrible fighting is between here and there. There is no way through." "How do you know that there's no fighting around Lake Shirwa?" asked Wikitani, wincing as Livingston bandaged his arm. "Because Manganja hold all of Lake Shirwa now," the man said proudly. "We have taken it from those treacherous hyenas, the Ajawa." The man snarled out the last words, staring directly at the boys. Both Chuma and Wikitani shivered. Did he know they were Ajawa? The doctor frowned. "What happened to the villages around the lake?" When the man answered, he did not turn to the doctor, but continued staring at the boys. "All Ajawa villages have been burned." He spat out each word distinctly. The only Ajawa near Lake Shirwa are dead ones, whose bones are being picked clean by buzzards. Soon, that will be the fate of all Ajawa. Ooh, not a nice ending.